free thought like that, it's demonized. If you ask questions, if you do your own research, if you try to get your own answers, you're ridiculed and you're ostracized, and quite often you're labeled as a crackpot conspiracy theorist or slammed as a revisionist or labeled anti-Semitic or bigoted or misogynist or racist. I mean, sure, there are some things that you can debate. There's some things that you can ask questions about. You're allowed to talk all you want to about which NFL team is the best, which season of Friends was the most entertaining, or Seinfeld, of course. You can research and you can debate and you can devote your entire life to frivolous things that actually matter not. And these things, they exist largely as a distraction from reality. But when you start looking into what really does matter, when you take the red pill and swallow it, that's when you get pushback. And one of the most forbidden topics of all time for the past several centuries has been the shape of our Earth. The shape of the planet. Is it a big globe ball hurling through space at a convenient 666,600 miles per hour? Spinning at 1,037 miles per hour? I mean, we're told, as a matter of fact, from practically the moment that we're born, that the Earth is a round globe ball and it's hurling through space at thousands of miles an hour, spinning around constantly on its axis, while we all just stay in place and feel absolutely nothing and ask no questions, by the way, about what's going on. We're supposed to just blindly believe that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour or more, spinning around itself in a circle every single day while we just stay put, while we just stay in place. Doesn't make any sense. And the whole story becomes even more ridiculous when you start factoring in air travel. So if the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, it shouldn't be able to take off. You shouldn't be able to take off in a plane. Or shouldn't we be able to just hang over and hover above the Earth until our destination just shows up underneath us? And the explanations that we've been given, of course, are nonsensical. And time again, researchers have cast doubt on them. And not just doubt, but at times they're completely disproven. The scientific narrative that remains in every textbook on Earth gets disproven almost on a daily basis. And lies don't stop here on Earth. They extend into space, whatever that is. There's a number of famous photographs of Earth that we were told were taken from space when some astronaut somewhere snapped the picture out of the side of his rocket ship. We're told that these photos are real, but like so many other things, it just isn't true. They're fake. They're computer-generated images, otherwise known as CGI. And we've been shown a bunch of CGI-generated renderings of what a round Earth would hypothetically look like from thousands of miles away into space, but we've never actually seen a photograph that a real person took with a real camera or a smartphone showing the same thing. And guess what? NASA admits this. And just recently, we were treated to yet another ridiculous CGI rendering of space as NASA released this blatantly fake video claiming to show a space capsule detaching from the International Space Station before descending back down to Earth. Take a look at this.
Separation confirmed. Starliner is now backing away from station and starting its return to Earth. Starliner thrusters will then complete 2 short firings to gradually increase the separation speed to help the spacecraft carefully move away from the orbiting lab.
The vehicle is now about 2 meters away from the International Space Station. At the time of undocking, Starliner and the International Space Station were flying approximately 260 statute miles over central China.
I mean, these space videos aren't even believable. This is almost an IQ test at this point. And while we're talking about ridiculous space videos, I'd be remiss if I didn't show you this one from last year when India claimed to have landed a spacecraft on the moon and then showed off completely fake video clips that looked like they were pulled out of a mid-90s video game.
India has done it. It has become now the fourth country to land a spacecraft on the moon after the U.S. and China and the former Soviet Union. Just moments ago, and we're talking just a couple of minutes, the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft landed on the lunar South Pole. Look at the celebration here. India's Space Research Organization is already sharing stunning photos from the mission. And look at these pictures of the approach. It's a rare close-up of the moon's kind of dusty gray terrain.
Of course, the Indians would make the and worst space host videos of them all. I mean, the whole lie gets blown up and the world realizes that space exploration is a sham. NASA will have the Indians to blame. They should have stuck to eating. Austin Witsit is one of the foremost experts on the flat Earth theory. He's done extensive research into claims about what the shape of the Earth actually is, whether it's truly moving, and into the many lies that the powers that be have been telling us and have been training us to believe for our entire lives. He's known as Witsit Gets It on X, and for more on all of this, he joins us now. Austin, help me try to understand why it triggers so many people when you start to question things, and then people just eat up videos like that.
Great question, man. I think it's you nailed it. We were told it from such a young age, that it's like one of the first things that you internalize as true. So when you tell someone that their entire worldview is wrong, they freak out. In addition to that, we've been conditioned to think that even questioning that is stupid, right? So people are terrified. They're intellectually insecure, so they're terrified of ever being labeled stupid or a science denier or whatever. That's really the most I can reason out of it. Is there's some type of emotional attachment to the idea, and people kind of fall in love with space propaganda. And they don't want you to take it away from them.
So, what research have you done? And what is some evidence that you have? Is it your position that the Earth is flat?
Yes.
And what evidence do you have of this?
Yeah. So I would say the Earth is a stationary topographical plane and it's geocentric. And the evidence, for one, I've been looking at this for maybe 8 years now. But I traveled the United States and I made long distance observations. So if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3,959 miles, then the surface of the Earth has to curve at a specific rate, roughly 8 inches per mile squared. And you can just go out and make long distance observations where you can see mountains from hundreds of miles away should be completely obstructed by thousands of feet of curvature. Some instances, literal miles should be blocking the mountains. And then, laser tests, line of sight microwave transmissions that are horizontal over bodies of water, mirror flashes. There are many, many pieces of evidence.
I have for a long time questioned this. Long time meaning maybe a couple of years when it was, kind of first. I think I talked to a guy called Flat Earth Dave, and he gave some pretty good arguments. I guess some of them were kind of, half-heartedly debunked in some ways. But let's talk about a more like common sense. I'm very much a normie when it comes to this, but I just know that NASA's full of shit, and I believe nothing that they say. If I am leaving Minneapolis and going to Florida, or traveling from Florida and coming back to Minneapolis, which I do every other week, if we're spinning at, 1,037 miles per hour, if we're spinning at 1,037 miles per hour and I take off from Minneapolis, how the hell am I ever going to catch up to Florida? And what is the scientific justification for saying, hey, that's impossible? What's the explanation that the globe people always give?
Yeah, so they say that the atmosphere moves with the Earth. And so that basically it's like you were flying over a stationary Earth. Because of course, to fly a plane, you have to treat the Earth like it's entirely stationary. That's the way planes are designed and pilots are trained. The problem with that is that actually what they're claiming, and they don't realize it, is that the plane is conserving its momentum as it leaves the surface of the Earth. So now you have a dynamic change in reference once you get into the air. The air actually would be moving separately from the Earth and slightly dragging behind it, lagging behind it, proportionate to altitude. Simply put, the higher you go, the more behind the Earth it would be. But they basically just claim, well, it's just an illusion. Fly the plane like it's stationary, and it all just magically works out. So that's their claim, is that the air moves with the Earth.
Okay, so this has been disproven somehow?
Yeah, well, for one, this is the simplest way to show why that isn't true. Is say you take like a high altitude balloon or even a drone, or Felix Baumgartner jumped out of a high altitude balloon like 100,000 feet up. The Earth doesn't move underneath it, doesn't move underneath him. In fact, when he jumped out, he landed miles in the wrong direction. The Earth was not spinning underneath him. So in that scenario, they'll say, "Oh well, yeah, the balloon's perfectly moving with the Earth." But then they'll invoke things such as Coriolis and claim that there's a detachment between the air and the Earth. So they have to invoke it both ways. Long story short, but the easiest, well, when I say easiest, it requires some understanding of physics, but it violates the law of conservation of energy and momentum for the atmosphere to be moving in lockstep with the Earth. As you increase altitude, you would have to have more and more energy to keep the air moving with the Earth, and that simply doesn't exist. No one's even proposed a suggestion as to how that could exist.
Is every pilot just in on this? I mean, they have to know.
No. Well, they definitely experience a flat, stationary Earth, right? They're trained that way. I think just like everyone believes the Earth's a globe, you never think about it. I've had many pilots that reach out to me once they realize and they say, I can't believe I never thought about this after flying for 20, 30 years. Former military pilots have reached out to me, for example. But so they're trained to fly like it's flat and stationary. And they just assume the Earth's so big you can't tell, right? It's never even a conscious thought. But then when people bring this information to them, they have an epiphany, basically. And I have dozens of pilots who have reached out to me, many of which can't even publicly state it for obvious reasons, which is insane and unacceptable. But so no, they're not in on it. They just fly the plane like the Earth is flat and stationary, right? And then I guess it's just out of sight, out of mind type of thing. No one really even considers this idea.
So when they learn, they can't say anything publicly because they would have their flight credentials stripped from them and they would be ostracized as a crazy person. Where is the edge? I mean, you would think that this the round globe ball theory, if it were untrue, would be really easy to debunk by just going to the edge. Where's the edge?
Yeah, good question. So there's something called the 60th south latitude. It's basically a circle drawn around us, similar to the Hunger Games, funny enough. And you can't freely and privately explore past that area. So that's where you would get to what's called Antarctica. So any theoretical edge would be there. Of course, there's no edge to a lake or a pond, right? So that's the highest elevation in the world, seemingly contains the water. But what's beyond there is a great question because our government went over there after we brought SS officers over here who were obsessed with Antarctica. We then became obsessed with Antarctica, and then we came back and said no one else can go there. So I don't actually know what's there. What would prove the Earth's a globe is circumnavigating north to south and popping back up on the other side of the ball, which has literally never been done in the history of mankind.
Wait a minute, it's never been done. Nobody's ever flown around the globe.
Not north to south, no. And funny enough, someone was supposed to do that, and he went to Antarctica just a little bit inland and turned around and went back north, and they gave him the world record for circumnavigation, even though he didn't do it. So
What happens if you try to go on an unguided tour of Antarctica?
you get intercepted. People have been intercepted and taken to court and even imprisoned. Based on what country you're in, you get intercepted.
What's the reason why they say that they're not going to allow you to go to Antarctica? Something to do with the penguins, or?
That is actually one of the explanations. Yeah, environmental reasons. Commercial flights are banned because of stuff like the penguin population, and they just claim that it's one of the only like resources that we have decided to preserve for science, and it's too delicate of an environmental location for people to inhabit. So they've all put their differences aside after being to war over land throughout the history of man, and they've decided, no, we'll just leave Antarctica there for peaceful scientific purposes. So they really don't even have a good cover story.
Talking with Austin Witsit right now about the shape of the globe. I'm going to bring him back here in a second, but I want to ask you guys a question. So imagine that you're in this plane, right? And for those of you who have flown before, you know when you're about to come down before the pilot gets on and does his announcement. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, for the flight deck, so captain speaking, we're starting our initial descent. Why do they all have that voice, by the way? I think they go to like flight school voiceover class. They all sound the same, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, before they even come on from the flight deck and they make this announcement about your initial descent, you already know that you're on your initial descent because you can feel it. So even the slightest adjustment in altitude, if you're climbing, you can feel it. And if you're descending, you can feel it. Even the slightest 100-foot drop. Turbulence, which is now weirdly referred to as unexpected rough air, which sounds pretty fake to me. I don't know what that means. But this unexpected rough air, you feel just the slightest bounce in the plane. So now what we're told is that the Earth curves and changes at about every 55 meters. I think that's right. Austin, is 55 meters what they tell us?
Sure, technically it's always changing, but that would be a good distance to a noticeable difference. 8
Okay.
inches per mile squared.
So if you're changing at every 55 meters and you're traveling at speed over ground of, well over 500 miles per hour, and the pilot has the autopilot engaged, which another announcement that they make, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our cruising altitude of 36,000 feet. So you're supposed to maintain this 36,000 feet over this round ball globe, right? And you're maintaining this 36,000 feet for a distance of, 1,300 miles, or for however long you're traveling. So you would obviously have to continue descending, like almost constantly. Am I missing something here? I mean, you would feel that constant altitude adjustment, wouldn't you? What's the explanation? How do they explain that away?
They just claim that gravity automatically pulls the plane around the curve without you having to adjust it just for it. And so you just fly like it's parallel, flat layers of air, horizontal layers, and it automatically accounts for it because of gravity, which is the way this entire model just says it's always going to look flat and stationary, but it's not. So but I will say what they can account for with the plane, and that's just an excuse anyway, but there's something called an angle of descent. So when a plane's coming in for a land, they actually have to calculate the angle at which they're going to descend to land, and they do that using a flat earth measurement. They use a flat earth horizontal baseline, and it's different on a sphere. Your angle would be different. They do this 150 200 miles out, and we've actually pulled the data and shown that it matches the flat earth prediction. That's what the calculation is. I've never got a rebuttal to that. There is no rebuttal. I've woken up many pilots pointing this out. The angle at which they land a plane proves they're landing on a plane Earth.
I just don't know how you would land something. I think when you're landing, you're usually doing just roughly over 100 miles per hour. I don't know how you would land something on something that's moving at 1,037 miles per hour. Isn't it difficult to land a fighter jet on an aircraft carrier that's moving? Doesn't that take like some pretty extraordinary skills?
Oh yeah. So they actually have a rope that catches the planes, and it's got like a very low success rate, relatively speaking, in the world of landing planes. And they have to land in the direction that the carrier ship is moving. There's no way that you could land a plane moving in opposite directions of the Earth. It's insane. So yeah, to actually land, and we're talking the carrier ships move just a couple miles per hour in the water, and then they come in and slow down and glide with it in the same direction. So this is another example of how they say, just trust me, fly and land like it's not moving.
Well,
but
I mean,
it
I think
is.
the cable is there because the runway on a carrier is so short. So
True.
I think
Yes.
that's part of it. If you had a very short runway that was on the ground, ostensibly you could put a cable system in there if people thought that regular passengers could withstand that kind of force, coming from hundreds of miles an hour to zero at the snap of a finger, which would obviously make for a less than pleasant landing experience. But why is this important, by the way, and why do people get so triggered about this conversation?
There's the big golden question there. Why people get triggered? I still just think it's because people have an emotional attachment to the idea. They've looked at the world through this lens their entire life, and you're taking away something that they hold near and dear, especially when it comes to space. The reason it's important is, well, for one, if you look into the Bolshevik Revolution, one of the first things they did was remove God. So anytime you're trying to implement a slave state, you need to remove God because people become nihilists and easier to control. If the Earth is in the center of the entire universe, and the logical question is, how did it get there? It had to be placed there, right? And further, if you've ever seen the Hunger Games, we have a circle drawn around us that we're not allowed to freely leave. So I would say that's obviously pretty important if we're being monitored with interior lands that we can't freely leave, similar to, again, the Hunger Games. And there are many reasons. The last one I'll say is whenever, just like they did with the whole COVID thing, they told you that the air that keeps you alive is going to kill you. And even though you're healthy and have no symptoms, you're sick. So you had to learn to not believe your senses or your experience. So when you can't trust what you actually experience, you have to turn to authority to give you the answers. That's the way this entire lie is. So everyone just can't believe their own senses, and they're perfect to be brainwashed. They're in a perfect state to be propagandized and brainwashed. So those are the three major reasons I would say.
We really do have we really do have a country and really humanity full of people who really, if they don't understand something, they always look for guidance from the authorities or those that purport to be the experts on certain things. Which is why, like, during COVID-19, everybody was looking at doctors, everybody was looking at researchers and scientists. Everybody believed Dr. Anthony Fauci. Oh, he's the world's foremost expert on viruses. You have to question everything. We live under the empire of lies. Are viruses even real? I don't know if I'm, willing to subscribe and commit fully that I believe that the earth is flat, but I do know that everything that NASA has told us is complete bullshit. I do know that there are a whole lot of scriptures in the Bible that support the flat earth theory. The firmament, for example. And if the firmament is real, that would explain why every time we try to watch Elon Musk launch a rocket into space from SpaceX, it seems to kind of, do this thing and then blows up. It also begs the question about the Challenger. Here's a spaceship shuttle that you're going to put real normal people on, including school teachers. Boy, they get up there and they see that that thing is flat. Imagine the fallout from that. We can't have that. Blow that thing up. There's a lot of questions about this. If you want more on this, follow him on Twitter, Witsit Gets It. Show it on the screen there. At Witsit Gets It. That's Austin Witsit. I don't know. What do you guys think? Are we on a big round ball hurling through space, 666,600 miles per hour? That's a really interesting number too, isn't it? Nothing demonic about that. That's not weird at all. More of the Stu Peters Show continues next. Go nowhere.
There's a whole bunch of stories that have to be dug into, rethought, reconsidered, and in some cases completely discarded.
As modern Americans, we've been spoon-fed this dumbed-down, cartoonish, simplified version of history. It's all fake. It's all bullshit. Everything that we have been taught is part of a self-serving narrative written by the people who will say and do anything to keep us on a leash. Now, this version of history, some big-name corrupt families like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and their many associates are credited over and over and over again with propelling human development. Throughout the late 18 and early 1900s, almost every major American city was burnt to the ground. What if we really are quite literally living atop the ashes of an advanced civilization that's been hidden from us for our entire lives? Old Sleepy Joe, you thought he was gone. Joseph Biden, the corrupt poopy pants himself, he might have dropped out of the race, but he's not done just yet. So now the question is, will he jam through this hidden tax trap at the last second right before he goes, where he could raid your retirement funds, supercharge your income taxes, increase your utility and gas prices? Of course, inflating costs on everything that you need to live. Some or all of this could affect you or your family in one way or another. So if you want to wait and see, if you want to roll the dice, you may as well kiss your retirement savings goodbye. But the good news is you can get prepared, but you better hurry. Reach out to Goldco today to learn how precious metals could help to protect yourself and your family. A hedge against hyperinflation, a barrier against criminal taxation. They're offering a 2024 gold and silver kit, plus up to a 10% match in bonus silver on qualified accounts. All you have to do is visit StuLikesGold.com or call 855-706-GOLD. Your retirement funds, your income taxes, gas prices, they could all be affected. Visit StuLikesGold.com or call them today, 855-706-GOLD. Again, StuLikesGold.com or 855-706-GOLD. I'm going to ask you for your undivided attention because I'm going to tell you about what could possibly be the most important life-saving supplement that I have ever talked about. It's called Cardio Miracle. Each serving of Cardio Miracle has a combination of over 50 high-quality ingredients, including a huge variety of fruits, vegetables, amino acids, and herbs, all of which come together to promote your body's ability to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is so important for heart health. It helps to relax and dilate your blood vessels, which supports blood flow and circulation. And I love that you don't have to take this giant pill to get all of this nutrition. No, Cardio Miracle comes in a powder formula, so it's really easy to mix all day throughout the day into juice or water and take it at any time. That also helps to support mood regulation because it's a neurotransmitter. It's a neuromodulator in the brain. So it can support the release of serotonin and dopamine, both of which are really important and involved in mood regulation. Cardio Miracle also supports mental clarity, sleep quality, energy levels. It can even help with recovery after exercise. Nitric oxide is essential for so many functions in the body, and Cardio Miracle supports the production of nitric oxide, so you get many benefits from just one supplement. Please go to highpowerheart.com. Again, highpowerheart.com. I'm telling you, this could quite possibly be the most important supplement that I will ever talk about. Cardio Miracle. Go to highpowerheart.com.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.